In this video, I'm going to be talking about Empyreal, which is an indie action RPG that launches today for Microsoft Windows, Xbox Series X and S, and PlayStation 5, and it's one with adventurous undertones made by the British developer Silent Games and published by Secret Mode. In Empyreal, players take on the Monolith using different weapon types, with each run altered by Cartograms, which control everything you'll experience in your run, from what enemies and bosses you'll be facing, to how many lives you will get and what loot you will find. The game also features a social element, allowing players to share cartograms and loot with others, assisting in their journey through the Monolith, even if they cannot help them directly. Before we get into more details of the game though, big shout out to Silent Games and Secret Mode for sponsoring this video. If you like what you see here and you want to pick up the game, you can use the link below to support the channel. Empyreal starts on a stranded planet in a distant future, a future where humans have long been an interplanetary species, busy exploring the far reaches of the galaxy. You play as a mercenary aimed to help an expedition that has spent a few unsuccessful years on this planet already, trying to explore a big alien structure known as the Monolith. Morale is low, and expedition members have been stuck in terms of progressing the Monolith and have suffered catastrophic losses with their initial incursions. The majority of the personnel didn't survive whatever they faced inside, and the survivors outside are trying to do what they can, but their prospects are bleak. Beyond this, it's hard to talk about the story more without any spoilers, but while the plot seems simple on the surface, there is a lot of exposition and character development to be had if you look hard enough, unraveling the secrets of the Monolith. Besides the main quest, Empyreal doesn't force its narrative, and it's up to the players to decide if they want to focus on combat or add more world building to their action RPG experience. If they do, however, the game doesn't disappoint, offering interesting characters that feel more human due to the intricate nature of their background and motivations, coupled with solid voice acting. Lastly, player choices while interacting with expedition members and whether players choose to care about their members at all can play a pivotal role with branching outcomes for each of the characters in the game's cast. Diving into the gameplay, let's take a look at weapons first, since these are a huge part of Empyreal's gameplay, which is very combat-focused. Empyreal offers three distinct weapon archetypes: Mace and Shield, Glaive, and Cannon. Mace and Shield makes you a tanky, formidable force that has a lot of survivability and hits hard. Compared to the other two choices, this archetype is the safest option of the three, and it's perfect for starting the game and learning the basics of combat. Next up is the Glaive. The Glaive is more dynamic compared to the Mace and Shield and lets you dash around the battlefield more. You feel faster and more agile, and your defense is how you move, parry, and dodge. The Glaive's attached abilities further improve this concept, letting you play on the edge and take risks. You are more vulnerable, but when everything clicks, the gameplay loop is very seamless and satisfying. Last, we come to the Cannon. It's a ranged weapon with 3 different firing modes, ammunition, and a need to constantly reload in the heat of battle. Blocking and parry and evasion mechanics with this weapon are tricky. The abilities don't disappoint, supporting various playstyles like mid-range combat, close-range combat, and so on, and at times the Cannon can be overwhelming to play, especially for new players. With more game experience and better reflexes, though, it transforms into a weapon of mass destruction, rewarding players for their dedication and hard work working with the weapon. Next, let's take a look at abilities. The selection of abilities in Empyreal further improves the weapon archetypes, letting players explore various facets within the core ideas initially introduced with those weapon types. Players start with a few abilities and unlock more over time. Some abilities can be crafted, and some stronger abilities are locked behind quest progression, and the most powerful abilities are a result of both crafting and quest progression. There are 2 types of abilities in Empyreal, regular and ultimate. The regular abilities don't cost anything, but have cooldowns and animation time during which a player character is vulnerable to enemy attacks. Ultimates, on the other hand, feature cutscenes and invulnerability frames. The ultimates don't have cooldowns but cost energy to cast. Energy is accumulated through regular attacks and takes time to build up. Clever usage of ultimate abilities also leads to cinematic moments and engaging gameplay. Empyreal features both gear and stats that are there to support and expand on already established weapon archetypes and gameplay philosophy. Later in the game, players are introduced to gear sets, a number of visually distinctive items. When equipped together, they provide build-altering bonuses and changes to stats and abilities. Oftentimes, this opens up completely new ways to play that were previously unavailable. While bringing immense power, sets aren't that easy to acquire. Players will have to face formidable foes and challenges, and sometimes those challenges won't be bosses or secret encounters, but moral dilemmas connected to character outcomes that depend on player choice and pave the way to the desired loot. The stats and stat modifications in Empyreal support certain playstyles and let players tinker with their favorite pieces of gear or turn an average item drop into a best new thing in your inventory for a stretch of the game. Overall, the gear and stats system has some complexity for players looking to dive deep in and min-max their stats and item build. Collecting all the set pieces often turns into a treasure hunt with some randomized elements. Empyreal features an enormous roster of enemies to put your gear, weapons, and abilities to the test. Together with difficulty and complexity, the game gradually introduces enemy types and combinations. Sometimes these introductions are cinematic and subtly hint at the combat or lore significance, and other times you realize after the combat there's a new variable to the equation, often after getting your butt kicked thoroughly. There are close to 10 different categories of enemy in Empyreal. Within each type there are multiple enemy archetypes that serve different purposes in battle. The number of abilities they have also varies, with typically a more dangerous enemy having more abilities or a higher significance compared to weaker enemies, but each of them has their part to play. Regular enemies are robotic creatures with various shape and form. Their visual design telegraphs their combat role and what to expect very obviously, but Empyreal has boss-type enemies that are more like humans and less like robots. Their importance is further underlined by orchestrated encounters. There's an introduction cutscene the first time players face any of them, and the encounter always happens in an area designed for boss fights. The music and a set of unique boss abilities accompany this experience. The Monolith is an alien structure full of mystery, and it's up to players to uncover its potential and purpose. Each Monolith level has a distinctive visual style and atmosphere. Without spoiling much of the story, game levels are drastically different when it comes to their visual representation. This makes total sense lore-wise too, with bright sunlit areas in one part of the Monolith, which contrasts dark, barely lit, mysterious areas introduced later in the game. It's also worth mentioning that the level design, while contributing to the overall mystery, aesthetics, and theme, each offers a plethora of hidden locations, vertical exploration, and objects for players to hunt down. Empyreal lets you gradually discover new things in areas you've already been to where you were too busy fighting enemies, thinking about your combat priorities, and paying more attention to combat and enemies, and less to the world and its aesthetics. There are also a few surprises that await players at the expedition base. They are mostly what we'd expect from a hub of characters. That is until the night changes the day. Next, let's talk a little bit about the difficulty of Empyreal. Empyreal has a game philosophy that lets players play the game however they want inside the Monolith in its established systems and world. The design approach can be seen in gear crafting, story arcs of expedition members, game story progression, level progression, and also with difficulty options, but you won't find difficulty sliders in Empyreal. Instead, the game lets players decide how difficult they want a particular level inside the Monolith to be. Each time you want to go inside the Monolith, you need to use the teleportation device. The device can't just teleport you in though, you need a blueprint of the destination level called a Cartogram. These blueprints can be given to you by an expedition member, but mostly you find them as dropped loot from defeating enemies. It is these blueprints that determine the difficulty of the destination level. Each time players go in, they receive a handful of such blueprints. The difficulty levels of blueprints vary, letting you choose easy over hard or vice versa. There are other variables to this equation as well, such as player gear, elemental damage type, and others, but the core philosophy is there. Players can jump between difficulty options however they want each time they enter the Monolith. This creates an approachable experience no matter the level of play. New players can play on easier difficulties, for example, and learn the game at a comfortable pace, or at the same time, there's enough room on harder difficulties for blood, sweat, and tears for those of you out there that crave challenge. The flexible difficulty system should lead to many positive outcomes, allowing you to master canon gameplay, for example, try out different abilities that you've overlooked previously, uncover new fun ways to defeat enemies, and explore more hidden areas inside the Monolith before ramping up the challenge at your own pace. Even though Empyreal is a single-player action RPG, it does have a few asynchronous online features. Players can trade level blueprints, cartograms, with each other after a certain point in the main story. There's also the option to send your friends loot via mail. There are two other interesting options while inside the Monolith. There's an option to send items into the Aether, a dimensional door of sorts that may randomly teleport an item to a different player once they finish a boss fight. Also, players can come across warrior spirits inside a particular Monolith level, signifying this is where another player got defeated. The game then offers a choice: aid them or leave them to perish. Nothing is groundbreaking here, but it's always nice to interact with other members of the community. Final thoughts. Empyreal is made by a small studio and offers a surprising amount of depth when it comes to gameplay, exploration, and story. From my first minutes inside the Monolith, I could tell that this is a labor of love from passionate developers. The level of polish, how coherent everything is, the visual beauty, sound design, while not a flawless game, is still an achievement in its own right. Empyreal also has enough complexity and offers enough content to justify a New Game Plus playthrough in my estimation as well, which could take up to 60 hours of gameplay, though it can be much shorter if you skip through the game's story if that's just not your thing. The freedom to play however you want contributes to the overall fun of the experience. With close to 200 enemy abilities, a huge variety of enemies and enemy types, an engaging combat system, branching storylines, and outstanding visuals, Empyreal might just be a hidden action RPG gem this year. So that wraps up our video on Empyreal. I hope you guys got something out of this one. I want to know what you make of the game though from seeing the gameplay. Is this a game that you've had on your radar? And again, if you do want to pick up the game and you want to help support the channel, you can use our link below to do so.